Yeah.
Hell's Angels, directed
Hell's
by
Angels.
Howard Hughes. That old
Yes.
crazy man, Howard Hughes, made a movie that he paid for with his drill bit money that his parents gave him when they died.
Show me all the blueprints.
Show me all the blueprints. He had not made blueprints yet by this point. I had seen this movie before because I saw the Martin Scorsese movie, The Aviator, when it came out, and I was like, I want to see that movie that they're making in it. And so I saw this movie when I was like 15, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Had you seen this before?
No, I have not.
I think I remember not loving it, but just thinking like, this is an interesting artifact of of its time. And I think that more or less holds true rewatching it. I don't necessarily think this movie is great. There's good stuff in it, but ultimately it has such a, like, I don't want to say nihilism, but like a misanthropy to it. Like, it's so the characters are so miserable, and it ends on such a note of just sort of like everything sucks.
I think, yeah, I mean, this movie also, like, the characters are miserable, but they're also like douchebags, you know?
Yeah, right. They're miserable, and they're also just like bad people. Or they're dumb, or some combination of the two.
Right.
So yeah, Howard Hughes had not made movies before this. He was a rich Texan whose family made a fortune in drill bits, and then died. And then he had a lot of money, and he decided, I'm going to make an airplane picture because I saw wings, and I think that would be fun to do.
This is a very post-Wings film.
Yeah,
this is
for sure.
This is more or less like, I want to make Wings also.
Like, I do think this movie is significant in like film history, and that it's like one really rich guy self-financed this movie himself. You know?
Yeah.
Like, this was made outside of the studios. Yeah, I think it was released by United Artists, but it was like he paid for it himself, including holding up production to find clouds that looked like boobs, which is a real thing that he did.
Wait, what?
That's in The Aviator also, but I tried to like find more documentation on it. There's not a lot. I couldn't find a lot, but that doesn't strike me as something that Scorsese would make up. That's too weird of a detail to just throw in there.
That's interesting. It's been a long time since I've seen The Aviator, so I don't remember that, and I don't remember any boob clouds in this movie.
I think this movie is also significant in that, so The Jazz Singer came out, I think, like a few weeks before they started shooting. And this movie was intended to be a silent movie originally. But then, I think about a year and a half in, Howard Hughes was like, hey, people want sound in their movies. Let's reshoot most of this movie to have sound in it. Which another reason why this movie had a massive budget. For the time, I guess. Like, this movie, I think, cost, in $1930, it cost about $2.8 million, which it only made back $2.5 million. So adjusted for inflation, that's about $51 million approximately in today's money. Which is
a pretty modest budget now.
Right, that's the I was trying to find like what's a funny example of a movie that cost about $51 million, and it's like, that's the budget of A Man Called Otto, which is not an expensive or like extravagant film at all. It's just like Tom Hanks is old and grumpy. Whereas this was like the most extravagant, expensive movie. It wasn't the most expensive movie ever made when it came out, but it was like kind of built up as this like crazy big budget thing.
There are a couple parts of this movie where I'm like, oh, that's where the money went, you know? But
yeah. All of them involving airplanes.
Yeah. I think most of that, though, was just because they had to shoot it twice.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily scream expensive movie at all moments.
Yeah. I think it's fairly obvious which scenes were reshot. Because even though there's sound throughout the whole thing, there's definitely scenes that are clearly shot silent and then had dialogue edited in afterwards or sound edited in afterwards. The fact that they had to reshoot so much of it led to... So Howard Hughes wasn't going to direct this originally. He was just going to produce it. And then he hired two different directors that both either quit or were fired And eventually he was like, fine, I'll just direct it myself. And then he directed it up until the switch to sound. And then the sync sound segments were directed by James Whale, who we'll talk about next episode for Frankenstein.
Yep.
His most famous movie. So it's like, this movie is basically co-directed by James Whale, even though he has a weird credit. I think it's like sound scenes are staged by James Whale. I think it's something like what the credit is in the movie.
Huh.
It also led to one of the more famous things about this movie is that it's like not Gina Harlow's first movie, but it's like her first big role. And she wasn't originally in it. Originally, Greta Nielsen, who's Norwegian, played that role. But since they were switching to sound, it's like, oh, she has a Norwegian accent. It doesn't make sense for her to play this like upper crust British woman. Never mind the fact that Jean Harlow's from Kansas City. Doesn't sound British at all, but whatever. So this movie, I think, is an interesting example of this like intermediate period where movies are still adjusting to sound. A lot of this movie is effectively silent. There's even intertitles in it.
I mean, I think the intertitles are used in an interesting way, though.
Right, because they used to translate German dialogue.
Yeah.
So they're basically subtitles, but it's taking up the whole screen.
Yeah, they don't know what subtitles are yet.
So two sort of filmmaking terms that I'm sure you're familiar with that I kind of want to bring up because I don't really know. Both are sort of like vague in their origins, which is kind of interesting on its own. Right? So like a lot of this movie is shot silent with sound added in afterwards. Now when stuff is shot silent, like when stuff is like, we're filming a scene, but we're not going to record sound for it, it's usually marked MOS on the slate.
I don't know that.
MOS, no one really knows what it stands for because there's multiple conflicting origin stories for it.
Like
The
ADR.
Right. ADR is the next thing that I want to bring up because they clearly ADR'd stuff in this movie. But MOS stands for either motor only shot, meaning they're only using a motive for the camera, not for the sound recording equipment, which is much less interesting than the other origin for it, which is probably made up, which is that some German director in Hollywood, it could have probably been von Stroheim or Fritz Lang or Ernst Lubitsch, we don't know, asked for a scene to be shot mit-out sound, and the guy, assistant camera, whoever, wrote MOS on the slate kind of as a joke, making fun of the fact that he said mit-out sound because he was German, and then it stuck. And we still say that now, which I think is a funnier story, naturally. And that's what I choose to believe is the origin of the acronym MOS. But either way, that probably originated around this time period when they were switching to sound and needed to mark which scenes would be shot with recorded audio and which ones wouldn't be. ADR is a similar thing where there's so many conflicting, things that it stands for. Additional dialogue recording, automated dialogue replacement, I think is kind of the most common one, maybe. But it's just the process of recording dialogue after a scene has already been filmed and dubbing it or syncing it after the fact. I've talked way too much about acronyms.
General things about this movie. It's two brothers, one who is a good old boy, British, stiff upper lip, traditional guy who sucks, and another one who is a coward who also sucks.
Yeah, there's the straight-laced dumb one and the cowardly horny one. Those are our two lead characters, Roy and Monty, respectively. And we meet them in Germany before the war. They're living abroad in Germany, having a grand old time drinking beer. And, Monty is philandering and making out with lots of ladies, including the wife of a German count who challenges him to a duel. And Monty, being a coward, just goes back to England immediately and is like, I'm not dueling anybody. Which then Roy decides to...
His brother Roy is like, don't be an ass.
Yeah. So Roy goes in his place to the duel and loses, but lives. They duel with pistols. He gets shot, but is in the arm, so he's fine. Is in the shoulder. This is nothing. Who cares? They both go back to England, and war were declared. Their friend Carl, who's German, gets conscripted to go fight for Germany.
They're all college buddies in Oxford
and
before the war.
Roy, being a good old boy, volunteers for the Royal Flying Corps, and Monty, being a horny coward, sees a sign that says "Enlist in the RFC and get a kiss." And so he immediately just kisses the lady, and they're like, "Well, you're in the Royal Flying Corps now. You got a kiss." And he's like, "What? Me? No."
I didn't actually mean that. That was just a joke, right?
Yeah,
I
that
just
was
wanted a
just a
kiss
joke
from a
kiss.
lady.
And throughout this sort of opening, right, there's off screen, there's this woman, Helen, who's Roy's been dating, and he's like, "Oh, Monty, you gotta settle down and find yourself a nice gal like Helen." And then we meet Helen, played by Jean Harlow, and she's like the least, like
The least traditional kind of person.
yeah, she's the most like flirtatious. What's another? I'm trying to think of a better word than loose, because that feels derogatory. This movie is kind of derogatory. This movie is kind of one of the almost like thesis ideas of this movie is like, don't trust women, they'll betray you.
Yeah, true. I mean, I feel like when I initially started watching this movie and realized that both of the main characters are douchebags, I was like, okay, so this is like, when I was realizing that this was more of a dumb action movie than Wings, right?
Right.
Like, I was like, oh, it's the Michael Bay version of Wings. And I was like, maybe that's not fair to Michael Bay. Like, he's always the explosion guy. And I wrote, the Roland Emmerich. And then right afterward, the two brothers are just being total douchebags. And I'm like, okay, it's the Michael Bay version of Wings.
Right, well, because Michael Bay has a bit of that, like, nihilistic, like, humanity is awful subtext to a lot of his movies.
But yeah, this is like a bro-y action movie.
It is, yeah. And it's one of the sort of points it seemingly is trying to make is that, like, don't care about women because they will only betray you by sleeping with someone else, which is
Everybody betray me.
It's a very Howard Hughesy stance to take, I feel like. It is wild how the movie never takes any effort to, like, the characters never learn anything besides just like, oh yeah, women are untrustworthy. There's a version of this where I think Roy would still get betrayed by Helen and learn that, like, oh yeah, you can't just like idealize people and just project everything you want someone to be onto a person.
There's also another version of this where Monty gets over his cowardice and becomes a hero.
Right. Like, that's kind of where you'd expect it to go, is Monty sort of, like, learns not to treat women as disposable objects and actually, like, gets his heart broken or sort of learns to care about somebody. And also overcomes his cowardice, which is established early on. But this movie is a very no one learns anything movie. And, like, the people they are in the opening scene are the people that they are at the end of the movie, which is bad, shitty people.
So they join the Air Force. It has a bit of a kind of training sequence a la Wings, but it really just kind of like jumps right into them being airplane guys really quick. If this is a Bay movie, like Wings is more of a Spielberg movie.
Right.
And then, this did not... I watched this after I watched All Quiet on the Western Front. And...
big difference.
Yeah, All Quiet, we'll talk about in a second, but All Quiet on the Western Front is a movie that's just all about the abject horror of war and just how traumatizing and horrific it is. And this movie is like, let's go kill some baddies.
yeah, it's very
it's pulpy, this movie.
It's very pulpy for sure. And I think when it gets into the flying scenes, you can really see where Howard Hughes's heart was at in terms of why he wanted to make this movie, which is he just wanted to film airplanes flying around. Let's be honest. That's his whole deal.
He just wanted to kill a couple stunt guys.
Yeah, I think 3 stunt pilots died making this movie.
Yeah, though the way, I mean, I think only one of them can be blamed on the production of the movie itself, and the other 2 were just like, they were doing a normal thing and then died. Yeah.
I mean, there's a story I saw multiple places where there was a stunt that one of the sort of lead stunt pilots refused to do. He was like, this is way too dangerous. And Howard Hughes was like, I'll do it myself. And so he got in the plane and he did it. And he crashed and fractured his skull. But I guess they got the shot.
The in-air stunt work, I also thought was maybe even better done in Wings, though. I think like this movie has a scene with like a million airplanes all like crisscrossing each other at once, which is cool. But I think that just like the editing and composition in the aerial scenes in Wings is better.
I think the flying scenes in this occasionally feel a little bit more kind of immediate, or a little bit more like there's a sense of danger to them, probably because they are incredibly dangerous, what is being filmed and how they're being filmed.
The sound probably helps too.
Yeah, there's a couple times where like there's a camera mounted like in the cockpit almost, looking at the pilot's face, and you can see the background behind them like just going crazy as they're like doing loops or whatever, and it puts you in the cockpit of a plane, I think, pretty well. Wings also did this, but I think this movie is even a little bit more kind of intense in its flying scenes, maybe.
Yeah, there are a lot of, I mean, really good parts of the dogfight, like the big dogfight toward the end of the movie, where it'll just zoom into individual Kaiser soldiers who are dying, and so they all die in like a kind of like unique way. Like, you know, one guy like, you know, gets shot and then blood comes out of his mouth, but like the way that each of those shots kind of ends is the person collapsing and then the plane losing control and the skyline just spiraling out behind them, which is really cool.
Which you can see because of all the clouds in the background.
Yes.
So there's a, you've seen The Aviator, right? You know there's a whole,
don't remember anything about
there's
The
like
Aviator.
10 whole minutes in The Aviator where Howard Hughes is like shutting down production because he can't find clouds, because it's like the airplanes look fake because there's nothing behind them to show relative motion. And then he asked Ian Holm, the meteorologist, to find him clouds that look like giant breasts full of milk. And he's like, I'll try, but that can't be guaranteed on any occasion. But eventually he finds his clouds and they film the whole thing, and it's great. But so watching this movie, I was just like, hey, there are those clouds. You know, it does help give a sense of like speed and sort of to ground where the planes are relative to each other. This movie has one scene that is shot in color.
Yes.
It was shot in multicolor, which is not Technicolor. It was a different process, but I think it was printed by Technicolor because they were the only ones that had the means
scale.
Yeah. And it looks pretty good for a 2-color Technicolor thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely you can get ahead with 2-strip Technicolor. Yeah. It's just that some things look abnormally red or green, but at least white skin tones look pretty good. It had me kind of wondering like how other skin tones would look with 2-strip Technicolor, because it seems like it was probably designed more to accommodate white skin tones. But it's like a big party scene, kind of where you're initially finding out that Helen is a bit more of a
bit more of a party animal. Yeah. So yeah, the Helen character I find kind of fascinating, just because of the movie seems to kind of hate her, but at the same time want you to kind of ogle her. It's very, this movie strikes me as just a sexist movie in terms of Helen sort of seems to represent women in general, because I think the only other women that we ever see are like French prostitutes.
Yes. Yeah.
And
or at
Helen
least like
is
brainless people who are just like fawning over the military guys. Yeah.
And it's like, so Roy is sort of like hyping up Helen to Monty as this like good girl that he's found. It's like, oh, she's so, you know, pure and behaves herself so well. And then we're introduced to her of her like running out from behind a bush, clearly having made out with a different soldier who's just like runs off in a different direction. And they're both just like hastily adjusting their clothing and like wiping their face. And then upon meeting Monty, Helen is immediately just like making eyes at him the whole time. And at the party, she's like, hey, why don't you drive me home? And he's like, oh, I guess so. And they get home and like they just immediately sleep together upon leaving the party. And then Monty is then also immediately like, how dare you cheat on my brother, you harlot? And it's like, dude, it was with you doofus. Crazy. And that's what I mean. Like, this movie's like moral stance seems very confused and
Yeah. I mean, even
bad.
about the war too, right? Like it
Right.
is kind of there are some parts that acknowledge that like Monty is talking about it being when he's thinking of defecting about it being a politician's war and like what do I need to die for all of this just political alliances and all this kind of thing, which is not untrue about World War One. It really is just like
Yeah.
like there isn't much of a reason for it happening. But and then there's a scene toward the beginning before Monty signs up gets duped into signing up by a siren is there's
By a siren with just a sign saying, if you sign up, we will kiss you.
Yeah.
And he's just like, well, I guess I have to sign up now.
He's like,
despite
hubba
not-
hubba boyoyoing.
Yeah.
But
he read the sign, but he only saw the word kiss. He didn't see the enlist part.
oh yeah, it's like the Simpsons bit where Bart's running for class president and he makes a sign that says sex. Now that I have your attention, vote for Bart.
Yeah.
But
that's how they got people in World War One.
Anyway, before that, toward the beginning of the movie, there's a scene of a communist or anarchist who or just
I think it's
or just
anarchist, right?
or just like a pacifist. Like someone in the audience calls him an anarchist, but like he is at least some kind of pacifist where he is saying all this misery in the world has been caused by and for capitalism. Why should we participate in this war? For capitalism? You will die for capitalism. Your sons will die for capitalism. Down with capitalism. Down with war. And then this guy like snidely in the corner goes, down with the anarchist. And then the whole crowd just jumps on him and beats him up. But like, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
And in certain ways, neither is Monty toward the end of the movie. But then also the movie like clearly judges him for
being a coward, which he is.
Yeah, for not wanting to participate in his like national duty, and it thinks that the war is a good thing, and it does some like. By this point, we already had D.W. Griffith making a movie apologizing to the Germans about how he portrayed them during World War One, and this movie just has some cartoonish mustache twirling Germans.
Oh yeah,
in
yeah.
it,
which I mean, probably at the time was a bit more of just like, I don't know, a bit more propagandistic. But like looking back on it, I don't know. It's just like a bunch of World War One Germans with monocles and big mustaches who are like, piloting zeppelins and challenging people to duels, and it's, I don't know, I think it's fun.
It's fun certainly. I mean, I don't think it's like necessarily offensive to make fun of Germans in that way, although it was like, between World War One and World War Two, when they were like, okay, we're not actually mad at Germans right now.
Yeah.
They are just like, cartoonish villains. And I do want to talk about also the Zeppelin scene.
We got to talk about the Zeppelin scene. That's true.
Which I imagine they shot it with a real Zeppelin, or at least if it was a scale model, it was like a very, very big one.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a scale model.
But
I don't know for sure.
There were some really great shots when the Zeppelin was being introduced.
Yeah.
Of it like bursting through the clouds.
Yeah.
You just see the clouds high up in the air, and then just an enormous Zeppelin comes out through them, which is amazing. And then also, the commander of the Zeppelin is very ruthless, cartoonishly ruthless. It turns out that their friend Carl is in that Zeppelin. And they are on a mission to drop some bombs on Trafalgar Square in London. And Carl is on this. I wasn't aware of this being a thing, but he's on this like little tadpole looking thing.
Yeah, little pod that they drop out the bottom.
Yeah, they bring it down on a winch so that he can target the bomb stuff dropping out of the Zeppelin above him.
Yeah, because they're above the clouds and they can't see down to where the bombs are gonna fall.
And Carl is conflicted. He has history in London and likes.
It's like
British
a month
people.
ago he was living there.
Yeah, and they're like, pick the location to bomb. This whole thing depends on you.
And so he tells them to drop the bombs over a lake.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, direct hit. We blew up all of Trafalgar Square. And the people in the Zeppelin above him are like, great job.
Yeah, which is that's a cool scene, I think, because it's like him, like, acting wise, because it's him kind of having to make this decision to, you know, betray his country to do the right thing or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know, once the bombs are dropped, and you know they were going to drop a few bombs, and then the commanders gleefully like, let's just drop some more, like destroy all of London. They drop more bombs into the water, but while Carl is getting pulled back up on the winch, which is going to take like 10 minutes or whatever, Monty and Roy and a number of other people in airplanes have found the Zeppelin and have begun a chase. And to rise high up into the atmosphere where the planes would not easily follow, they need to lose a bunch of ballast weight from the Zeppelin very quickly.
So might as well just cut the line for the guy in the pod.
Yeah.
And then have like half the crew jump out.
Yeah, which is so crazy.
I wonder if there is any like historical precedent for that happening, or if it's just a highly exaggerated example of kind of like the German mindset in World War I of like sacrificing people willy-nilly.
Yeah, they were just like, it was like a whole like Zero fighter situation of like, just kill yourself for the greater cause right now. Like jump out of a Zeppelin to your death, please. So yeah, they kill Carl. He falls to his death, and then like about a dozen other people from the ship just salute and then jump out.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty crazy scene. It's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
But
doesn't work. Zeppelin still gets blown up.
Yeah. There was a comment on YouTube of some person who was like, wow, like the people who jumped out, what good soldiers. And like,
yikes.
I don't know, man. Like, this is a little more complicated than that.
I mean, I guess from a purely like military standpoint, maybe.
It was presumably a jingoistic American who was saying this.
Yeah.
But yes, to bring Roland Emmerich back into it, the Zeppelin finally goes down.
I see where this is going.
There is a what they've shot down most of the planes, including Roy and Monty's. They're okay, but they kind of crash landed on the ground, and all the other planes have been shot down in various ways, except for one whose gun was jammed the entire time. And he's like,
doesn't anybody have any missiles left?
And so he's like, what do I do? We've got to get the Zeppelin. And so he's just like, more suicide bombing. He just flies his plane straight into the Zeppelin and blows it up.
Yeah.
And it's cool as fuck.
I mean, yeah, it's a plane flying into a Zeppelin. The Zeppelin blown up in a big fireball. It rules.
There is, you know, you're seeing part of this scene from the ground where Roy and Monty are like walking out of their plane, and then they see the Zeppelin blow up and they're like, hell yeah, you did it. And then the Zeppelin starts falling right toward them, and they just book it like away from the Zeppelin. And then there is an amazing shot, like really wide shot of the two of them running away, and then just this enormous on fire Zeppelin crashing to the ground in front of them.
Yeah.
And
behind
like
them.
Oh yeah, behind them.
Yeah.
And like I just audibly went, holy shit.
It's also, I mean, during World War I, I'm sure that phenomenon was observed. I'm sure people saw Zeppelins getting blown up and shot down. And so like people knew what it looked like. But it's crazy just how close that footage looks to the Hindenburg disaster.
Yeah.
Right. It's a work of effects and miniature and bigature and whatever, however they did it. But it's like, it's pretty wild how accurate it is, just to like, yeah, everyone now knows exactly what this looks like, and they nailed it.
Yeah, they had like the flaming skeleton of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looked really amazing. And there was an intermission in the movie, and it was right after that scene.
Yeah.
And it
well
felt
placed.
Yeah, it felt really good because like it allowed people to go out into the lobby and talk about how cool what they just saw
Holy shit, that
was.
Zeppelin scene was amazing.
Which is exactly what I did during the intermission. I just
Yeah.
walked out and it was like, oh my god, that scene. It was so cool.
Yeah. I'm sure that's what everyone did when this movie premiered. This movie's premiere was a big deal. I guess we could talk about that too. Or should we talk about the end of the movie first?
Sure.
So the movie ends with, right, the brothers get shot down. They're involved in this like spy mission, right, where they use a stolen German bomber to bomb this munitions factory. And then they're escaping, and we get the big sort of third act dogfight scene. And they're eventually shot down and captured, and because they were in a stolen German plane, they're technically spies. And they get brought to the Baron from the beginning of the movie, who was behind the whole duel thing. Roy sort of convinces him, the Baron, to give him a gun with one bullet in it. He's like, hey, like, I hate this other guy that I'm with, and like, I'll tell you what you want to know, but he needs to die. I don't really know what Roy's actual plan is here. He's like, okay, I have a gun now with one bullet.
He fulfilled his plan. Like maybe he wanted to, like when he wanted all the bullets because he wanted to see if he could stage an escape. But like the reason why he wanted the gun with one bullet and he did this whole stunt was because Monty was about to tell them everything and about an invasion plan, and would have like sentenced hundreds of people to their deaths so that he could get away. And Roy was like, let me handle it. And then he kind of posed as if he was going to do that instead of Monty.
Mm-hmm.
But he realized that he couldn't trust Monty to not like spill the beans. So he just shot his brother.
Yeah. In the back.
Yeah.
And then Roy is then, because he was captured as a spy and refuses to give up any information, is then shot by a fragment squad. And that's the end of the movie. A brother murders his other brother and then is killed. Which is, yeah, just very much in line with the whole, like, just the nihilism I get from this movie. Of just like, yep, bad stuff. Like, Monty is introduced as a coward and he dies as one, kind of. And Roy is sort of like, I guess throughout the movie kind of held up as this, like, more moral or more upstanding of the two, but he still is, like, at best naive, at worst, like, completely incapable of reading people, and just very, very selfish in his own way.
Yeah. Self-destructively traditional in certain ways.
I don't love this movie. It's I think it has a lot of cool things about it. I think like the early like 2-strip Technicolor stuff is cool.
Yeah.
The airplane stuff is, the Zeppelin bit is great. And I think that comes across too with, you can tell what Howard Hughes cared about the most. He's like, this Zeppelin scene is gonna rule. And then when it comes to like actual like character scenes, he's like, who cares?
Yeah.
It feels a lot less kind of, feels
make
more
it vaguely
epic.
Wingsy.
Yeah. This movie had a big premiere at the Chinese Theater in LA, and everybody who was everybody showed up. Buster Keaton was there, Cecil B. DeMille was there, Gloria Swanson, Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, all the who's who of Hollywood. There's footage of it. There's like newsreel footage on YouTube, which is kind of funny, which is then copied very accurately in the movie The Aviator also.